Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever felt like failure was attacking who you are at your very core? That sting in your chest, that voice in your head whispering, maybe you're not enough. We've all felt it. And here's the truth, failure feels personal because our mind is wired to protect us, to make us safe, to make us feel small when we fall. But what if I told you that that very feeling, the very discomfort you're experiencing is not a sign of weakness, but a signal, a wake-up call, a moment screaming at you to grow, to rise, to become the person you were meant to be? Every champion you've ever admired, every story of triumph, every breakthrough you've ever dreamed of, it didn't come without falling, without stumbling, without that raw human feeling of, I can't do this. And yet, the difference between those who break and those who break through isn't luck. It's the understanding that failure is not a judgment on your worth. It's the proving ground of your resilience, the furnace in which your character is forged. Today, I want to take you on a journey to see failure differently, to feel it differently, and to use it not as a chain that holds you down, but as the rocket fuel that launches you higher than you ever imagined. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. When we stumble, when a project doesn't work out, when a dream collapses, the instinctive reaction is to internalize it, to feel as if it reflects something fundamentally wrong with who we are. But the truth is, failure is not a reflection of your identity. It is a signal, a measurement, and a stepping stone toward growth. Every single person who has ever achieved something meaningful has failed countless times, yet they didn't see those failures as judgments on their worth. They saw them as feedback. They recognized that mistakes, setbacks, and disappointments are part of the natural process of growth, of learning, and of expanding into new possibilities. When we allow ourselves to separate who we are from what we achieve, we gain clarity. We begin to understand that falling short doesn't mean we are inadequate. It simply means we are engaging in something meaningful enough to challenge us. Our sense of identity should not be tied to outcomes, because outcomes are influenced by countless variables outside of our control. To measure your value by your success is to place yourself at the mercy of luck, timing, and circumstances. But when you measure your value by your effort, your willingness to face discomfort, and your ability to persevere, failure loses its sting. The way to build resilience is to practice seeing failure as a tool rather than a verdict. Each time something doesn't go as planned, it provides critical information about what works, what doesn't, and what needs adjustment. In that moment, you can choose to interpret failure as a reflection of your worth, or as a lesson that brings you closer to mastery. Every setback carries a hidden message, and the sooner we train ourselves to extract that message, the faster we move forward. The mind is a powerful instrument, but it can deceive us when we allow emotions to dominate perception. The discomfort of failing triggers self-doubt, shame, and even guilt, which can convince us that the problem lies in our essence rather than in our approach. Yet when we consciously reframe the experience, when we remind ourselves that failing is not a personal indictment, but a necessary step in the pursuit of excellence, our energy transforms. We stop fearing mistakes and start seeking them, because each failure is a chance to refine, to adapt, and to rise with greater strength. Success is rarely a straight line. It is the cumulative result of trials, errors, and relentless adjustments, and only by separating our sense of self from the outcomes we produce can we unlock the courage and perseverance required to continue pushing forward. Our emotional brain has a way of making failure feel intensely personal, and this is something every human experiences. The moment we fail, the primitive parts of our mind light up with signals that we are under threat. It's as if our brain is shouting at us, warning us that we are not safe, that we are not enough, that the world is judging us harshly. This reaction is not a reflection of reality. It is a survival mechanism designed to protect us from danger. In the modern world, the danger is rarely physical, but the emotional impact feels just as real. When we miss a goal, lose an opportunity, or fall short of expectations, our mind automatically interprets it as a personal attack, even though failure is often circumstantial, temporary, and completely outside of our intrinsic value. The key lies in understanding that perception is everything. What your brain tells you in the heat of a moment is often exaggerated, colored by fear and past experiences. You have the ability to shift that perception, to choose how you interpret the signals your mind sends. Instead of seeing failure as a judgment on who you are, you can see it as data as a guide, as feedback for the next step. Every great achiever has had to battle this emotional distortion. They've learned that the intensity of the feelings of failure is not a measure of reality, but a signal that they are stretching beyond comfort, pushing boundaries, and engaging in something significant. The emotional weight is actually a sign that you are alive, that you care, and that you are playing a big game. If you can step back and observe the feelings without attaching them to your identity, you unlock immense power. You start to understand that emotions are temporary, and that while the sting of failure may feel overwhelming in the moment, it will pass. The perspective shift is what transforms failure from a personal assault into a tool for growth. By training your mind to separate emotions from truth, by recognizing that failure is not an indictment of your worth, you begin to respond instead of react. You begin to ask, what can I learn? What can I improve? How can I come back stronger? This conscious approach rewires your brain over time. The intensity of emotional responses diminishes, and your capacity to act, to take risks, and to persist increases dramatically. Ultimately, the reason failure feels personal is because your mind is wired to protect you. But the power to reinterpret, to reframe, and to reclaim control over your emotions is entirely in your hands. When you harness this understanding, the fear and shame associated with failure begin to lose their grip, allowing you to move forward with clarity and determination. Pain is one of the most powerful forces in human life, and yet it is often misunderstood. When we experience failure, the emotional and physical discomfort can feel unbearable, as if it is designed to punish us. But in reality, pain is not an enemy. It is a signal, a guide, and a catalyst for transformation. Every great achievement, every leap forward, every story of lasting success has been forged in the fire of adversity. Pain tells us where we are resisting, where we are clinging to comfort, and where we need to grow. It is not meant to stop us. It is meant to teach us. The key lies in learning how to harness this pain, how to turn what feels like a setback into momentum. The moment we embrace the discomfort, we shift from being victims of circumstance to active participants in our own growth. This requires courage, the courage to face reality as it is, to feel the weight of failure without shrinking from it, and to use it as fuel for action. Pain creates clarity. When things are easy, when life is smooth, it is tempting to stay in a state of complacency, to avoid challenges, and to accept mediocrity. But when we experience struggle, our priorities become sharper, our vision becomes clearer, and our determination intensifies. Pain ignites passion because it forces us to confront the gap between where we are and where we want to be. It demands that we make choices, that we take responsibility, and that we refuse to settle for less than what we are capable of achieving. Every setback carries a hidden opportunity if we are willing to look for it, to extract the lesson, and to transform it into growth. This is the principle that separates those who are defeated by failure from those who are propelled by it. Transformation is never comfortable. Growth requires tension, stretching, and the willingness to endure discomfort. The emotional sting of failure can feel overwhelming, but it is temporary. What remains after the pain is endured is strength, resilience, and a deeper understanding of what is possible. The capacity to use pain as a catalyst changes everything. It turns fear into courage, doubt into determination, and disappointment into opportunity. When we understand that every painful experience is actually a doorway, a chance to evolve, we no longer avoid challenges. Instead, we seek them, knowing that the more we face, the stronger we become. Pain becomes the teacher, failure becomes the lesson, and every difficult experience becomes a stepping stone toward mastery, shaping not only our actions but also our character and our capacity to achieve extraordinary results. The stories we tell ourselves have a profound impact on how we experience failure, shaping whether it crushes us or propels us forward. Every person interprets events through an internal narrative, a lens constructed from past experiences, beliefs, and emotions. When we fail, the mind naturally looks for meaning. And the first story it often tells is one of inadequacy. I'm not capable, I don't deserve this, or I always mess things up. These narratives make failure feel intensely personal because they convince us that our value is directly tied to our successes or mistakes. But here's the truth. The story is not reality, it's a lens. We have the power to rewrite it, to choose interpretations that empower rather than diminish us. Shifting the narrative starts with awareness. Recognizing that the self-critical voice in your head is a story, not a fact, is the first step toward freedom. Once we see the narrative for what it is, we can consciously reshape it. Instead of saying, I failed because I'm not good enough, we can say, I failed because I tried something ambitious, and I now have the opportunity to learn and improve. This simple shift in language transforms the emotional experience of failure, turning it from a source of shame into a source of insight. The stories we choose to tell ourselves influence not only how we feel, but also how we act. A narrative of limitation leads to hesitation, fear, and avoidance. A narrative of learning and growth fuels courage, creativity, and resilience. Every successful person understands that their inner dialogue shapes their outcomes. They train themselves to see setbacks as chapters in a larger story, not as judgments on their identity. Reframing failure as a lesson rather than a verdict allows us to detach from self-criticism and instead focus on solutions, strategies, and forward momentum. Over time, consistently choosing empowering stories rewires the brain, creating patterns of thinking that naturally support perseverance and growth. When failure stops being a reflection of our worth and starts being a signal for adaptation, we gain clarity, focus, and energy. This is why mindset matters so profoundly. The interpretation we assign to failure is far more important than the failure itself. By consciously crafting stories that honor effort, resilience, and the learning process, we convert painful experiences into powerful catalysts for transformation. The narrative you adopt today becomes the foundation for your ability to navigate challenges tomorrow. Every setback, every misstep, every moment of disappointment becomes a piece of evidence not of your inadequacy, but of your potential, your capacity to evolve, and your readiness to rise above, to act differently, and to create results that reflect your true capability and ambition. Embracing failure with courage is one of the most transformative practices a person can develop. Most people instinctively shrink from failure, avoiding risks, clinging to comfort, and hoping that setbacks will somehow bypass them. But the truth is that failure is inevitable if you are striving for anything meaningful. The difference between those who achieve extraordinary results and those who remain stuck lies not in talent or luck, but in the ability to face failure head-on, to meet it with courage, and to use it as a springboard for growth. Courage in the face of failure is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite fear. Every moment of discomfort, every stumble, and every disappointment carries the potential to teach, to strengthen, and to redirect you toward a better path. When we embrace failure, we shift from a mindset of avoidance to a mindset of mastery. We begin to see setbacks not as permanent stops, but as detours that guide us toward more effective strategies, clearer goals, and stronger determination. This approach requires a deep belief in one's capacity to learn and adapt. Courage allows us to take risks that others shy away from, to innovate and to push beyond the limits of what feels safe or familiar. The people who achieve greatness understand that fear is a signal that something valuable is at stake and that failure is a natural part of pursuing it. By leaning into these experiences, we cultivate resilience, creativity, and insight. Each failure becomes a lesson in strategy, an opportunity to refine skills, and a test of perseverance. The act of embracing failure also transforms our relationship with risk. When we stop fearing mistakes as personal judgments, we begin to explore possibilities we would never have dared to consider otherwise. Courage amplifies potential because it frees us from the paralysis of self-doubt and perf. It teaches us that the process, the striving, the experimentation, the effort is just as important as the outcome. In doing so, we create a mindset in which challenges are embraced, obstacles are navigated, and setbacks are used as tools rather than barriers. This philosophy builds not only skill but also character, instilling discipline, patience, and the tenacity to continue forward no matter the difficulty. Those who consistently embrace failure understand that it is not the end of the journey but a necessary companion on the road to mastery. Every disappointment becomes a classroom, every misstep a guide, and every challenge an opportunity to act with greater clarity, determination, and courage, transforming what might have been a moment of defeat into a launch pad for growth, innovation, and eventual success.